Hey folks, it's Frederik from the FWX podcast. I've been talking a lot about on the podcast about uh, different kind of things when it comes to storytelling, and I use often specific uh, techniques and names and figures and a kind of terminology that you need to be a writer or a starting writer or someone that is just venturing into story building and world building and all of that. And I'm going to be starting a series now of shorter videos where I talk about those things. And I'm going to start that now. But before I continue, if you like that kind of content, please subscribe to the channel. You can also like this video if you like. You can also share this with people that you know, your family, your friends, people online, people here in the comments. And so let's begin with talking about subject number one. And I want to do that by the hand of one of the most well known uh, fictional worlds that we have come to know. And that is this one, the Game of Thrones. And so this was a highly acclaimed Emmy Award winning TV series about several kingdoms ruled by several families. They were trying to vie for the Iron Throne. And the reason why I want to start with this particular world is because today, or rather this summer, is exactly 1 year ago that I saw this series for the first time. And I fell overhead for it. It is a fantastic series, has an amazing story, has a lot of interesting stuff that we can talk about. And the thing I want to talk about right now is that it has such a rich lore and an interesting setting that the show is set in. Of course, it's also based on the books by George R. Martin, A Song of Ice and Fire, and then several other books as well. And so, one thing I have noticed about this series is that, like I already said, this is a very fantastical medieval kind of setting and story because it's all about power and lust and greed and specific kind of things when it comes to fantasy. But it has a very modern kind of plot. So you have all these great, interesting characters from Jon Snow to Jaime Lannister to Varys to the several kingdoms and the Targaryens and the dragons and all of that. But at the heart of it, if you look at the story in its largest kind of view, it's effectively people trying to come together, fighting for their place and their power and their country against an oncoming apocalypse. And that is in the form of the army of the dead, with the Night King at its command. And I find that to be very interesting. And that makes this story so interesting. That we know what it's like to hear a lot about apocalypses and dystopia. Another term you must have heard a lot if you like this kind of content and read books and watch movies and TV series, that things happen and that uh, things happen that leave people scattered. and separate from each other throughout the world. And this has a great, big, fantastical world. Here is another picture that I have. It's of the giant land piece called Westeros, with all the different kingdoms and the families there. And I'm not going to go over all of that, of course, because that is a load of lore and characters. But at the very essence of the larger story is that these are people fighting against each other for power, control, greed, and to have the right to exist as they find themselves agreeing, allying, or fighting against each other. And I found that a very interesting concept. And of course, Martin has made a gigantic lore. You have this show, of course, which was epic in all its conclusion. And of course, as the stories go from behind the scenes, is that they ran out of content basically from the books to adapt into the TV series, which is why, like many say, it was a lackluster ending. But personally, as someone who's looking at the story at a larger point, it is not that lackluster to me. And I know that's a hot take, but personally, I really find that this is a solid TV series, epic in its scale, with rich and powerful characters. And so, another influence that I think is important here that sounds pretty modern in our rhetoric when it comes to talking about these kinds of things is that you have a nuclear deterrent in this world. And those, of course, are the dragons. They're big, breathing, ballistic missiles in a fantastical world. They literally can lay waste with their fire breath to a lot of things. Uh, I'm not even gonna list it because there's so many. And it's also yet another sign of power in this world. The Targaryens are literally known for being close with the dragons and using them against the others, making them basically a must have, just like nukes in our modern world. It's basically a, a thing to have to defend yourself so that you can live in peace. But of course, in the story, that is not the case. Not everyone has dragons in the Game of Thrones show and in the books too. And so I wanted to share that with you that I think that this is a very interesting concept where you have all the influences from the past, a lot of fantasy, a lot of medieval stuff, and then have this what looks to be a modern, larger tale. Like the Army of the Dead basically resembles a fantastical version of zombies, which is already a somewhat fantastical version of in itself. You have dragons, like I said, basically giant living ballistic missiles. You have several kingdoms, just like in our world. You have lots of nations that are huge and are powerhouses that have the right equipment to defend themselves. I mean, take a look at this map for a moment to look at how large the Stark Kingdom is. It is enormous. There's a reason why they call it the Kingdom in the North. Not to mention all the others, of course. And yet, the one supposedly with the most power is one you don't even see on this map. And those are the Targaryens. Because they have control of the dragons. And in this case, especially in this show, Daenerys has a couple of dragons. And she's the only one. Which basically makes her like a supreme ruler, basically. A queen that lives to rule over you. And you see what that does to people. To have power, to have greed, to have lust and power. Because, and that's another thing I'm going to make a video about, the show is incredibly graphic and candid. And I'm going to talk about that in the next video. So, thank you for sticking through with me. I'm going to rephrase for a moment. So, thanks for following this video. If you like this kind of content, you can like the video, you can subscribe to the channel, you can comment if you want, and you can also share this with friends, family, people online, or even here in the comment section. So thank you for all of that. I'm Frederik. This is the FWX podcast, and I will see you in the next video.